What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance crew, and you are watching DaVinci Reacts. Today I'm going to be getting into another episode of Suleiman the Magnificent. This is episode 5 of this mini-series that they have of them. Now, I believe there's a 6th episode as well. I thought that the series only went to like 5 videos, but in this case it does go further than that. If you are unfamiliar with Extra Credits content, I will have a link for Extra Credit at the end of this video that you can click on. It'll be an icon that pops up over here. If you haven't seen their videos, I highly encourage you to go and check them out before you watch this reaction, especially this original video. Watch this before you watch my reaction. And if you are somebody that's a fan of history and historic events, historic people, go to their channel and check it out, because there's a lot of videos that they've done of topics that I wouldn't have expected them to do, and they've done it. So if you want to, if you're wondering, I wonder if they did anything about this particular event, chances are they probably did. So go to their channel, go to their videos, and just look through it until you eventually run on something that you're like, wow, I want to watch this. Because I promise you'll have at least one of those moments. Now, with that being said, let's go and check this out, see what it has to offer. Last time I watched this, everything was going a little bit too well for Suleiman. He did lose trying to fight against one of the Habsburgs. But his friendship and everything with what was his friend's name? Ishmael? It was... I probably got it wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. His friendship with him was a little bit too rosy for me. So I'm thinking, okay, something's going to happen, and the thumbnail for this video definitely raises my suspicions even higher. So let's check this out and see what the hell goes down.
Fate saw the jewel in me and pawed the heart apart to have it. It was one of his favorite poems. Once he saw the joy all throughout it, the hope with the struggle. But over time, he had forgotten it all. All but that one line. It was 1533. Ibrahim led his forces one more time. This time they headed south. The Safavids had acted to anger him on more than one occasion. Now he would do away with the Shia kingdom to the south. But as Ibrahim marched his army south, he found that sun and mountains were their principal opponents. Territory was captured, but no battle was ever had. They wintered, then they captured Tabriz, the capital of the Safavids, without a fight. Now it was Suleiman's turn to join them, to accept homage and to remind his provinces of his might. There was only one problem with this conquest. The leader of the Safavids was nowhere to be found. He wasn't in their capital when Ibrahim marched in, and neither was his army. So they pushed deeper into Safavid territory, and yet, nothing. No army, no Shah.
I'm guessing what they're going to do is they're going to try to draw them in further into their territory, and then flank them and have them cut off their supply lines, and they're going to be screwed.
They took the ancient city of Baghdad, and yet during the whole march, their force wasn't even harassed. Not a trace was found of this phantom desert army or their king. The only way they knew this army was even real was the fact that everywhere they went, all the grain was missing. Markets were stripped bare, fields were burnt, wells smashed. Try as they might, his majestic imperial army of 200,000 simply couldn't catch up to the force of light horse of the Safavid king. No matter how far they chased him, he would always dance back, burning all in his wake. Eventually, he was forced to call off the pursuit. His grand army of 200,000 had lost 30,000 men without ever firing a shot. Supplies were just too difficult to attain, and his line of communication with his capital was stretched too thin. Even as he marched back to Istanbul, showered in praise and glory, he wondered how long they could even hold on to such remote and inhospitable territory. But something even worse troubled his mind. A black rage filled him. For months, Roxolana had been whispering to him of how his vizier, Ibrahim, was starting to forget who was Sultan, that his friend had been returning friendship with ingratitude, that he considered himself master and Suleiman slave. He had put these words from his thoughts. He could not doubt Ibrahim. But on the campaign, Ibrahim had said that he would take the title of Saraskar Sultan. Now, in Safavid Persia, the governors were known as Sultan, but in the Ottoman Empire, there was only one Sultan. It burnt like a coal in his chest. It gnawed at his heart and wouldn't let him go. Each step on the road to Istanbul, it consumed his mind. Every minor irritation, every little problem, every small sign of arrogance from Ibrahim rekindled the thought with renewed vigor. At the start of January, they arrived back in Istanbul, and the thought still would not leave him. On the 15th of March, Ibrahim's body was found strangled in his room. There would be only one sultan in the Ottoman Empire. The next years passed in a renewed rivalry with that hated Spanish prince.
Wait a minute, we're going to just brush over that? I mean, I guess they're trying to like make it seem implied like there was a conspiracy, like a cover up. So it was vague who might have killed him, but I'm guessing it's heavily implied that Suleiman was the one that killed Ibrahim. Is like how common is it among historians that Suleiman was the one that killed Ibrahim? Is it like is it just a theory among many, or is it like the number one main? Oh no, he did it. Like it's not even implied. He did it. He wanted to make it seem like it was implied, but no, he's responsible. I'm just curious about that because it kind of like brushed over it very quickly.
Charles's forces had seized Tunis out from under him while he'd been busy in Safavid Persia, which led Suleiman to finally truly ally with the French. He joined them in their war in Italy against the Habsburgs, and broke with the ancient policy of Ibrahim to go to war with Venice. The war in Italy was poorly managed all around, with the French showing their true colors and often seeming more embarrassed to have a Muslim ally than they were eager to crush their foe. So at last Suleiman recalled his great Admiral Barbarossa and had him remove the Venetians from the islands they had long occupied off the Ottoman coasts. He, Suleiman, also pushed the empire east, fighting with the Portuguese for control of the Indian Ocean and the lucrative trade it promised. He also warred in Hungary with Charles and Ferdinand. When John Zapolya died in 1540, Ferdinand had seen it as an opportunity to attack and laid siege to Buda. Suleiman again marched his forces north and repulsed the Viennese prince. But this time there would be no puppet state, no intermediaries. He annexed Hungary, finally bringing it under complete Ottoman control. And with the capitulation of the Habsburgs and the peace he forced upon them, he could finally again turn his eyes south, to the wellspring of tragedy, Safavid Persia. The question of succession still plagued his mind. He had made Mustafa his official heir. Even in Europe they wrote of him. One had said, "May God never allow a Barbary of such strength to come near us." Of his second son, Selim, even he knew they called him the sot behind his back. Bayezid, his third son, was perhaps not a bad man, but he wasn't a great one either. And his fourth son, Cihangir, was perhaps brilliant. His mind worked in ways that some days outpaced his own. But he was humpbacked and sickly. No one would ever accept him as sultan. But of all of his sons, only his first, Mustafa, was not of his beloved Roxolana. And so, as he sent his chief vizier, Rustam, to lead his army south, his mind was not at ease. Then he received a letter from Rustam, saying that the soldiers were beginning to whisper that Suleiman was weak and succumbing to old age because he was not out there leading them. That perhaps it was time for a younger prince. That they had even sent word to Mustafa along these lines, and that Mustafa had not entirely rejected them. He was furious. Crushing the letter in his hand, he bellowed, "God protect us from Mustafa, daring to take such infamy upon himself during my lifetime." He immediately ordered the army recalled. The invasion would be cancelled. The next year he would lead them himself. And when summer came, he did. And then he sat and penned a letter to Mustafa. He would ask his son to join him, to clear his name. If he came, he was innocent. If he stayed away in fear, it would be an admission of guilt. Days passed. Then, outside of Karamania, a small band appeared on the horizon. Men on horseback, growing by the moment, coming towards the sprawling camp of the imperial force. It was Mustafa, come to prove his innocence. As the sun set, Mustafa was summoned to his father's tent. He lifted the heavy flap and entered alone. Immediately he was set upon from all sides, while from behind a curtain his father watched in silence. But Mustafa fought with the strength of 10 men, and threw off all of those who piled upon him. They raced forward to seize him again, but he froze them all with a look. The men wavered. Perhaps they were about to join this young warrior, so proud and alive. But then Suleiman stood and peered over the curtain with a glare of such fear and rage that the men all threw themselves upon Mustafa again. This time he could not shake them off. Once he was pinned, one of the men seized a nearby bowstring and strangled him to death. They then threw the body in front of the tent for all to see. But even as they did so, the black rage passed, and he, Suleiman, sank back down into his chair and wept. He would pay many times for this decision. So would his empire. So
Yeah,
would the
seems like
entire
it.
Ottoman world. For
He's
one
let power
decision
corrupt him.
sometimes decides 1,000 other choices. Now he had no option but to kill Mustafa's son, his own grandson, and so he sent men to Bursa to deliver the order. When they arrived and read the order to Murad, Mustafa's son, he simply said, "I am willing to die in obedience, not to the emperor's orders, but to God's." Then Suleiman ordered Mustafa not disposed of like a traitor, but given the funeral he deserved. For a week he lay in state in the Hagia Sophia, but it did nothing to assuage his guilt. And then word came that Cihangir, sick and weak beloved Cihangir, favorite of all his sons, succumbed to grief. For he had loved Mustafa and looked up to him, and now at last followed him into death. And he was left with but 2 sons. But even as he campaigned in Persia, his decision caused other ripples. Mustafa's death led the 2 remaining sons to quarrel more. He could see them both beginning to compete for power. His campaign in Persia proceeded like the last one, with the Safavids retreating and burning the land. This allowed him time to think. He would separate his sons, move them both farther from the capital. He would never be able to achieve a complete victory against the Safavids. They kept him occupied for a few years before he could finally force on them, if not the peace he desired, at least a peace he could accept. At last, with that out of the way, he could return and put his house in order. Then Roxolana died. Another little piece of him fell away. He ordered his sons apart, away from him, away from the capital, away from anywhere they might think of seizing the throne. Selim moved right away. Bayezid hesitated. His mind raced. What was hesitation other than disobedience? And what was disobedience to the Sultan except treason? His fury boiled over. He would not abide treason in his empire. He threw his support behind Selim against Bayezid and crushed his army in the field. But Bayezid fled with his family to the hated court of the Safavid king. Again and again he demanded of the Safavids that they kill that filthy traitor, that they wipe him and his family from the world. But they refused. Again and again they refused. Then he made sure they wouldn't refuse. He even sent his own executioner to take their heads. He had but 1 son. And there he was, a lonely old man, walking through his garden.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's what happens, man. That's what happens. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Isn't that how the saying goes? Yeah. This is why human nature, people like to have these idealistic ideas. It's a deeper talk, and I don't want to get into topics that are unrelated to this, but just know that there's a lot of subjects where people will use examples and they base it on this idea of there being an ideal world. There's no injustice. People in authority are always right, or if they do something wrong, they have a reason for doing it, something wrong. Everybody sharing, and the concept of communism, for example. In an ideal world, it will work perfect. The problem is, if you give someone power over that system, they're going to corrupt it, because that is just how humans are. That goes with everything, though, not just communism. Capitalism, too. In an ideal world, everybody would be competing, but also thinking about the benefits of the consumer and making sure that everything is affordable to everybody. But that's not how it works. In an ideal world, true capitalism would be just as corrupt, dirty, and horrible as absolute communism, simply because of human nature. In a capitalistic world, there'd be child labor. There'll be no welfare of any kind. Everything you'd have to buy, you'd have to pay for, whether it's driving on a public street. Well, nothing will be public, but when I say public, I mean what we have now that's public. So whenever I say public, just know that. Driving on a public street would cost money. You'd probably have to pay money to go see judges, to contact police, fire departments, and other types of public services. Everything would cost money. And everything would be competing with other people. And will be looking to save money if they can. So if there's a monopoly in specific areas, they won't do nowhere near as much because they know you have no other option but to use them. Trust me, as somebody that lives in Central Ohio, I am stuck with my internet provider. Everybody talks about like AT&T fiber and all these other fiber services like Google Fiber and everything, and I'm just looking from the outside looking in like, man, that must be amazing. I wish I could do that. Where I live, the best I could get is, well, besides Spectrum, which is like about maybe 100 megabytes a second. That's the most I can get. AT&T, the best service I get from them is 5 megabytes a second download speed. There's nothing I can do. I'm just stuck until I eventually move somewhere. But yeah, imagine that on a national scale. But yeah, maybe I'm just being nihilistic. I don't know. I've lost so much faith in humanity just from the internet alone. Social media has made people into this thing that I've just lost faith in. Oh man, I can't express enough how disheartened and just disappointed I am in humans because of how stupid people on the internet are. And I don't mean people that just talk shit, but people that go around spreading bullshit information without actually looking into it, because everybody's ego is so big they can't admit that they're wrong on something. They can't admit that they made a mistake. So instead of going out and searching for the truth, they instead go out and look for sources that reinforce their already established decision or mindset, whatever they already set their mind to. They don't look for anything to challenge it. They just look for stuff to verify it. And it's like the internet is a place where no matter what batshit crazy idea you have, there is somewhere that will verify that. No matter what it is, whether it's flat earth or being anti-vaxxer, or whether it's believing that lizard people run the world, or whether it's believing in this QAnon shit. Like, there's somewhere that will tell you that that's the truth, when that's not the case. And then we're getting in a position now where it's even easier to fake stuff. Like I saw recently, but the whole Beirut explosion. There was like a video where someone was trying to say there was like a missile that caused that explosion. Like there was a video where you could see the missile. But the thing is that was a fake video. They edited that. But the problem is people won't stop and like go and search and be like, oh, this was an edit. They'll just, like, as soon as they see it, they just go, oh, well, that's the truth. That's what happened. That is what happened. And then they go around and preach that. And it's like, oh man, I've just lost faith in humanity. I really have. Maybe I need to do a compilation of people that restore faith in humanity. That's what I'm going to do. Tomorrow I'm going to do a video about faith in humanity restored. Like a compilation of people doing good stuff or going above and beyond, even though they don't have to. I need it. Now, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. I look forward to seeing what you have to say in the comment sections about anything, whether it's about Suleiman or about what I talked about recently. Just anything. I'd look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. I'm going to give you the deuces, and I am signing. Well, before I do that, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. Best way you can support me is to hit that like button, subscribe, and share, of course. Or you can sign up to my Patreon, which is only $1 a month. It gives you access to exclusive reactions, TV show reactions, and movie reactions. Wednesdays, I do a TV show. Saturday or Sunday, one of those 2 days, I do a movie reaction. Recently, I did a reaction to the movie The Brothers Grimm, or Brothers Grimsby. And I'm still trying to scrub off the filth and violation that I got from that movie. And on Wednesdays, I'm watching The Office, the UK version. Now, once the office is over, there will be a vote on Patreon, exclusively on Patreon, that will determine what the next Patreon TV show will be. And in any of my movie reactions, you can leave, or at least the most recent movie reaction, you can leave a comment about what the next movie you'd like to see me react to is. Every week, I do a reaction to either a movie I pick or a movie that you guys pick. So one week will be my pick, the next week will be your pick, and then I'll just keep alternating like that. My pick so far is the Harry Potter series. I want to catch up on the Harry Potter series. I've never sat down and watched the whole thing. I am on the last movie right now, Deathly Hallows Part 2, that I'll be reacting to this Saturday or Sunday, one of those 2 days. And after that, I don't know what I'm going to jump into. Likely, I'm going to try to get all the popular movies that I haven't seen, like the Lord of the Rings series, the Godfather movies, the Indiana Jones movies. Like, there's a lot of movies that are like really big established movies that I've never seen that I like to do reactions to. But again, every other week I will do a reaction to whatever the highest requested comment is. Now, unless I do reserve the right to change my opinion, you're not going to, like, as much as Babe Station sounds awesome, I probably shouldn't do reactions to Babe Station. Now, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. I will look forward to seeing what you have to say in the comments, and I'm going to be signing out. So I'm going to give you the deuces, and I'll see you later. Deuces.